Hi friends, welcome back to another video and episode of the James Red Podcast. I'm here with my friend Austin Ross once again. He is a jazz pianist, and we're going to talk about being inspired by different art forms and how art inspires art. And I want to dig into a conversation about that and figure out where we can go. We always tend to go all sorts of interesting directions. Last time we had a conversation, this was sort of the topic, but by the end we realized we had not really spoken about said topic at all. So we said, hey, let's try it again. And then a couple months later, we're like, we're going to give it another shot, and hopefully we can stay so on topic that it's painful, you know? But we'll digress in beautiful ways, I'm sure. How are you, Austin?
I'm fantastic. Everything's on the up and up right now. My grandma's on recovery. They're talking about sending her home from the hospital, and I just did like 2 gigs in a row, which is exciting because I've not been this busy with music ever. So things are looking really cool right now. Good.
Yeah, so the more active times in life seem to be the more fulfilling, even if in the middle of that activeness is some not so happy activeness. But I'm glad you told me your grandmother was doing miraculously well, and that's excellent.
Yes.
Very good. Okay.
We went from a couple days life expectancy to now they're talking about sending her home from the hospital, gosh, which is amazing.
Yeah. That happens far too often, but it speaks to our medical system, man. Like you when you go through something like that, you just realize how horrible it would have been to go through this situation in 1480.
I know,
right? It would have there's so many situations where simple things that we now know and that we can now do were not available to people back in those times. Yeah. Well, very good. Okay, so where do we start? I think a good place to start with this is to answer the question of why is it important to diversify your inspirations? Like, why should we look outside of our craft? And I think it's something along, for me, it's that you are able to have a more diverse pot to pull from, stew of creativity to pull from in your art, and you remove the risk of sounding, looking, creating just like somebody else who just focuses on who is a photographer or a musician, and they're not as diverse. The 10% more diverse you are in your inspirations, that's going to affect how you compare to another person. And I try to be as diverse as possible, and I'm inspired by all sorts of different crafts, like inspired by music, which is very easy because I'm also a musician, but painting, design, architecture. Like, I went to the Freedom Tower for the first time, and I walked, if you walk to the right position up under it, it ceases to be like a rectangular building as buildings are normally shaped in, unless you were in ancient Egypt. They were way ahead of the game. But you look up and the building changes from a rectangle to a point, an arrow. It's like a perfect arrow. And so you look straight up and you're like, what? Where did the building go? It looks like a pyramid. It's amazing. And so I just think about the thought that goes into putting this thing together, and one, making sure it doesn't fall apart, but also making it aesthetically beautiful, and the discipline that goes into that, and the teamwork, and it also speaks to the fact that we as humans are fundamentally creative people, whether you say you're creative or not, because we have this idea in our culture that some people are creative, some people are not. If you're doing anything in life that is meaningful and important and actually is pushing some sort of, creating some sort of progression, you're being creative. And you're probably going to be attacked for that at some point along the lines, but that just means you're doing the right thing. But like, I mean, I listen to people talk about, MMA fighters. I'm inspired by communicators, huge one. We can talk for hours about that. I love listening to communicators, comedians. police and soldiers, like just the sort of the call to danger that they have to run into the things that can kill them, and they have to be on their toes and they have to be well trained. I love seeing people who are well trained at their thing, and they're able to execute with fluidness. Starbucks baristas, I worked at Starbucks for a little while. The fluidness there, less dangerous. I mean, you could drop some milk on your you could hot coffee on your shoe.
I'd say it's comparable to a policeman's
job.
Angry customer could go sideways real fast.
Yeah, things can go really wrong.
You get an order wrong, and one wrong order could it's over for you.
Right.
That's it.
Well, no, right near, like if you're steaming some milk right near the end, if you're not careful, that milk can shoot out, hit you right in the eye, and you won't be the same.
It's over.
Yeah. You're a
different person after that.
That's a good point.
The old James is dead.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we've already made some good progress in this conversation. So why do you think it's important?
Well, I think it's important to kind of look outside of your bubble from time to time. And I think as a musician, it's important for musicians like myself to not always get like stuck in this kind of, rut where it's like, I'm a classical percussionist, so I only listen to classical percussion etudes, and I only pay attention to other classical percussionists, and I'm only going to school to be a classical percussionist. I'll never be involved in another ensemble, so on and so forth. And so it's important, like, hey, there's some really good rock drummers out there who can play the drum kit, with flair and style, and they probably have a lot of good technique, and you could stand to listen to some of that. You could listen to jazz, you could listen to pop music, commercial styles of music, experimental music. So without even like going outside necessarily of your, I guess, your field, so to speak, just looking at outside of your immediate vicinity of like, hey, I'm doing my thing. Like, I'm a jazz pianist, so all my favorite music is, at least jazz. But then I think I draw a lot of inspiration from great pop songs that I've listened to, and, great rock and roll songs and songs I grew up listening to that my dad likes, hymns, worship songs, country music. And then the next step beyond that, obviously, or that you can just gain a lot of insight and be informed just by stepping outside of that. And then the next step, obviously, is like looking at other art forms entirely, like dance or photography or painting or sculptures or, coffee art or whatever. And I think that's kind of not necessarily as important to be an artist, to be a craftsman. Like, a blacksmith doesn't necessarily have to pay attention to a tapestry artist to be a good blacksmith, right? But it'd be interesting to look at how he goes about his work, I guess. I'm not a blacksmith. I don't know anything about smithing. But as a musician, yeah, as a musician, I'm, it's constantly fascinating to as an exercise to translate things that inspire me, such as color and shape and emotions and things of that nature, and try and translate them in a communicable way, something that I can relate to everyone through my music. So,
what's an interesting genre that you feel like you pull from that actually informs the type of music that you play?
Electronic music.
Electronic music.
Huge.
Okay.
Yes, very big influence on me.
What about that is so interesting to you?
Rhythms. Rhythms and interesting musical textures. Because jazz, I love jazz, and jazz is kind of like my main thing. But the one thing that gets kind of boring about jazz is you have the same textures throughout the whole genre, pretty much. And so the best jazz artists today, in my opinion, are ones that play around with different sounds and different timbres and different instruments. Like, I have a great admiration for a French vocalist named Layla Marshall, and her band makeup is drums, bass, and guitar and vocals. So no piano, which is pretty strange off the bat. And then I don't think she has bass on most of her tunes. I think it's mostly just her like looping herself, doing like vocal like chords and stuff like that. Overdubbing herself. And that's like really interesting to me. That's like a really cool way of expressing yourself that I don't think is very much explored in jazz, because jazz combo, right, is just you got your rhythm section, your guitar, your drums, your bass, your piano, and then you have your horn section, which is typically a trombone, an alto, and a tenor, and then a trumpet or two. Right?
Be right back. I have to turn my fan off. I just forgot.
Okay.
Okay, I'm back.
Welcome back.
I realized that that's gonna not be good for my audio. Oh no! Cords are stuck to things. This is a nightmare. We have to start over.
This is the Skype curse, my friend.
I know. Oh yeah. By the way, we're using Skype for this because I got a new software, and hopefully this is going to look much better than it has in the past, because I spent some money on this, and I think that it's going to really up the feeling and the aesthetic of it. It's going to go from, rudimentary pop to jazz, if you know what I mean.
Intellectual pop music.
So there's something that like happens, I think, when music is a little bit too genred. It's a little bit too, maybe insular is the word.
Flanderization is a term I would borrow from the television world.
Wow, I've never heard that one.
Flanderization? Oh, man. Okay, so you watch The Simpsons, right?
In the past, I didn't, and I just watched an episode the other day, now that I've grown into my fully well-rounded and politically informed self, and I realized it was a huge mistake that I never watched it, because it's a pretty great show.
I haven't watched too much of The Simpsons, but it's so culturally pervasive that you can't not know anything. You can't go your whole life without knowing something about The Simpsons, right? Homer's an alcoholic. Lisa is an intellectual. Bart's a dumbass who skateboards everywhere, right? Like that kind of thing. Like you just know those things even if you don't know anything about the show. Well, anyway, Flanderization was a coin. I forget who coined the term. I think it was TV Tropes, but it's the concept of a character that becomes more and more of a stereotype of itself over the course of his lifetime. So Ned Flanders is the neighbor of The Simpsons, right? And in the first few episodes, he's kind of like a quiet neighbor who's a Christian, right? He's kind of conservative, so he has some, conservative family values and stuff like that. But like nowadays, like towards the end of the show, he's like a rabid, like aggressive, in your face, forcing his values down your throat versus the shy, neighborly Christian that we saw at the beginning of the show. That's Flanderization.
They decided to make him insist upon himself. Right. Yeah.
So he becomes more and more of the exaggerate. I forget the exact definition. I sat down and wrote out a definition of it. But basically, the parts of the character that are kind of comical and silly become more and more exaggerated over time until they are the only aspects of the character. To another example is like Kevin from The Office. If you watch The Office, another comedy.
Okay. Yep, I love The Office.
At the beginning of the show, Kevin's like kind of a dopey, but still smart accountant. And by the end of the show, he's literally just a complete and utter idiot. He's a complete retard who can't do math or anything. And it's like, I mean, it's funny, right?
Yeah.
That's an example of like not a severe Flanderization, but he's still been Flanderized.
Yeah. Well, they realized that was the thing that people really enjoyed. That was a thing that people really enjoyed. So they decided to press into it, or they got lazy with writing, or
right.
Or perhaps
it's normally not really intentional. It just happens over the course of when a show runs for years and years and years. You kind of lose, and you have so many writers, you kind of lose perspective on like what was this character when we invented him. It's more like what was he last week, right?
Yeah, so there's this. I think the progression applies in music as well, where when things become a genre, they start to insist upon themselves so much that it becomes it becomes noise. It becomes not engaging, less authentic feeling. And so you get, like for me, I struggle with listening to what I would call the sort of the quintessential jazz, which you normally hear, which is just, you know, and with the drums, I want something to happen, and it's just like he's just doing little notes on he's doing the whatever you call it, the normal notes that you would hear.
He's doing a ride pattern.
Yeah, right. I'm a drummer. Oh gosh, he's doing sort of like a triplet ride pattern type thing, and then the snares just kind of on the offbeat just hit it, you know. And when I listen to that, it doesn't do a whole lot for me. I need it to have some edginess to it. That's, you know, personal preference.
Listen to Max Roach.
Okay, Max Roach. I'll write that down. And you know, Snarky Puppy, we've always spoke about Snarky Puppy as a great example of.
They have like 3 drummers in the band at any given time.
Right. And they're a fusion band, so they're pulling in all sorts of different inspirations from different areas. That's what makes them so interesting, is if you were not a musician and you didn't know what a fusion band was, you would listen to that and go, what is this? Mm-hmm. As opposed to when you walk into a doctor's office, you hear jazz, you go, freaking jazz.
This is bossa nova.
This is right. Right. So it, yeah.
The girl from Ipanema.
The drums for that sort of music is really exciting. It's like it's hard to break out of the pattern that you play to keep the backbone of the song going. But when you learn to play it quote unquote correctly, like when I realized that there's a certain pattern that you should start with, and then you can diverge from that, but like find that pattern, and you're not just doing what it sounds like, but what it's actually supposed to be. Mm-hmm. It's, for one, it's really hard. It breaks your brain a little bit, but 2, it really challenges you, and then it sounds so much better than what you would have come up with if you did not engage with that pattern. Mm-hmm. Which is a good example of why guidelines are a good thing.
Yes.
But
restraints breed creativity.
Correct.
That's next week's topic.
Put in about, yeah, I know. So okay. So what I was trying to get at with the music becoming too insular and sheltered is it's an example of what I think can happen if you're not intentionally diversifying your inputs. It becomes so what was the word again? Flanderization, or even a caricature or a meme of itself, which can start to feel wrong, or, you know, it has an effect that is not necessarily
disingenuous.
Positive. Could be just, yeah, disingenuous, or
like Muse's latest album.
Like shots fired, man. Shots fired. Oh,
Muse has been writing the same song for like 20 years.
Yeah. I've only heard maybe 3 of their songs, and maybe that's why.
You've heard all of them at this point.
Okay, I've heard all. Right, great. Just different words. So yeah. So what do you think about that? Do you think that I don't think it's inherently negative that happens, but you are sacrificing something by not intentionally reaching out of your bubble.
There is something to be said for the fact that there are sects of and groups within genres and within certain forms of art that tend to be more conservative than others. And the more experimental group wants to be like, your rules are stupid, you're stupid, I'm going to forget all of you and just do my own thing. And the more conservative people are like, hey, this has been done for 500 years. You don't mess with this formula, right? And there's a balance to be found between, hey, yes, we are standing on the shoulders of giants, right? And we come after generation after generation after generation of artists who have paved the way for this certain thing, but we can also be way pavers and path makers, where we we can also develop our own new styles and our own new ideas without completely throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And I'm going to draw, forgive me, I'm going to draw on examples from my own experience as a musician, because that's what's most relevant to my experience.
That you would.
Yeah.
I will allow it.
I'll try and break out into like some sports analogies and,
can you
some more interesting stuff. But
I'm going to need you to pull on the experience of LeBron James for your next analogy, please.
I'm going to have to call him. I'm going to have to ring him up.
I got him on speed dial.
Oh, really?
Is that still a thing? Can you still speed dial people on an iPhone?
It's called your favorites list.
Oh, I guess that is true.
Yeah. Right. So I have, if you go into your phone app, you just pull up your favorites list. It has a list of all your people that you need to.
Austin, I found it.
Nice.
I found it. I have my wife, my mom, and my dad. You can see how socially engaged I am.
I have my immediate family, my grandma, my girlfriend, my best friend, and the gate that I need to call in case anyone tries to visit me in my house. It's the neighborhood gate.
Okay, is the gate friendly?
Yeah, they're very nice.
Okay.
Unless you get that one old mean lady who works in the middle of the night. She's not very nice. But everyone else.
That's why they put her in the middle of the night.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where she belongs. Damn it.
Oh, damn it.
Okay, what were you saying? I'm sorry.
So, anyway, to go back to the topic of conservatism versus, progressivism in terms of art, not necessarily the political sense of those terms.
I was going to say that they eerily mirror each other, though. Isn't that
not
crazy?
Not necessarily.
Well, no. Oh, well, okay. So can I?
In the true sense of those words, yes.
No. Let me state my case.
Okay.
Sorry. So what I mean is that they mirror each other in the sense that one is interested in preserving tradition, which has its value. One is interested in being rid of it and taking a political term and putting it in the musical world, being all postmodern about it and saying music is whatever we want it to be and it can be whatever we want it to be. And they forsake, you go too far this way, that you forsake the traditions that make, for example, I believe America a great country. So it's interesting how those two mirror each other, but I'm sure they don't mirror each other in other ways, which you're about to state.
Well, if you believe, no, you're absolutely right that they're true conservatives are concerned with preserving traditions and preserving what they believe to be the core values and morals of the country. And true liberals are concerned with moving forward and adapting to the future and, creating a new path forward rather than being stuck in the past. Virtually no one who's actually truly conservative or actually truly liberal identifies with those terms. Those terms, being a conservative in America means, you're anti-gay rights, you're a gun-clinging, gun-toting, Bible-clinging, Bible-thumping, red-blooded redneck.
Well, you're saying the perception of conservatives.
Right.
Are you saying that?
But then, like, most conservatives are Republicans, right? And they're hawkish about foreign countries, and they want to invade whatever the Middle Eastern country of the week is, because why not? I mean, Donald Trump's is like, F you, Iran. It's like, bruh, like. Meanwhile, liberals or people who call themselves liberal are mostly Democrats who, for all intents and purposes now, are the more conservative party. They're totally obsessed with making sure things don't change from, Bush, Obama, and I think Clinton era politics.
Okay,
right?
so what you're saying is that people will people who have quote unquote conservative values that aren't sort of that are appalled by the over boxification of conservatives that are represented. They disconnect themselves from that title.
Yeah, because
they don't like how they don't agree with everything they're doing. They just.
And can I say that going too extreme one direction or the other is unhealthy, no matter what direction you pick.
By the way, we're having a political conversation. I don't even care right now. This is great.
So to go back,
we'll make it back. We'll make it back.
In music.
My point is that
Wynton Marsalis.
Huh?
Wynton Marsalis is he's probably done the most for the preservation of jazz education in America and the promotion of jazz in schools, making sure that people remember the jazz tradition, where it comes from, the roots. And he's a fantastic player, just utterly ridiculous trumpet player. I mean, like, you just see recordings of him just playing in jazz clubs and you're like, this guy is world class, right? And it's deservedly so, right? But at the same time, he has a very unhealthy belief and a very healthy perspective on modern music, like fusion, like Snarky Puppy and the Funky Knuckles and Avishai Cohen and, any, funk, world music, right? Because in his mind, jazz was, and this is a little bit of jazz history for you. In the 70s and 80s, jazz kind of had like a dark ages. Like, people didn't know what was happening. We were like, what is going on? Miles Davis was doing rock and roll albums that were all noise music. I mean, I couldn't name a single great jazz, like true jazz album from the 80s. We've since come back from that, of course. We've got great modern artists like Brad Mehldau and Joshua Redman, Tigran Hamasyan, Hiromi.
I feel like we're going through that with hip hop right now. Like, I feel like the post 2000 era hip hop is definitely experiencing that same kind of thing, because
absolutely,
like 80s and 90s hip hop, for me specifically, 90s hip hop was pretty incredible, and you had a lot of hip hop artists who were they were creating lyrics that had a lot of meaning and depth to them. They were talking
because
about things.
they actually considered it to be a work of poetry, rather than a quick means of fame and fortune.
Right,
which unfortunately is the current state of affairs in hip hop. Is like, I'm gonna be a rapper who gets grill tattoos and look tough and just screams into my microphone because that's the cool thing to do.
Yeah. Sorry,
that's what's going to make me
my wife's
famous.
bringing my power cord, so I need to make sure my computer doesn't.
Don't die in the middle of the interview. That'd be terrible.
So
anyway,
what I was saying was that 90. Oh, now he's in trouble. Are you in trouble? Do you have to go to your room now?
I'm being really loud, supposedly.
Oh no, we're just too passionate.
We're too passionate.
We gotta tone it down, man. We're just trying to.
Sorry.
We're gonna break a hole in the world.
Damn it.
So
I'm forward in this room, so
I think there was like something about hip hop in that time that was rebellious.
It's new. It's fresh.
It's
right?
new, right? It's new. It's fresh. It was rebellious. They were talking about things that were like, it was this intense rage against the system kind of feel, and now it's one of the most popular musical art forms out there, and I guess it got more commoditized, all sorts of different influences, and now it's nothing but a collection of people talking about sexuality and money and how they're gonna shoot this person.
How great I am.
And then we get surprised when somebody gets shot. But that's another story. That's another conversation entirely. But it's just like, it's devoid of deep meaning. It's devoid of what it used to be. But there are a lot of hip hop artists out there who are still doing that. Of course, I want to.
Right. The conservative hip hop fans are the ones saying, listen, modern rap music is not rap music at all. It's not real rap, right? Go listen to, Scarface or Biggie or Tupac if you want real rap music. And then there's modern artists who are like, hey, no, like, there's guys like Kendrick, there's guys like, Childish Gambino, there's guys like Jaden who are like cutting edge, real artists who are innovating the art form and still preserving the ideas. So
and these are also people who were pulling from different genres. It didn't feel so sheltered. You know, that's one of the right,
jazz.
right. Yeah, they would, they put in a little jazzy lick and over the beat, and it really changed the feel of the song.
Right.
You know, they were pulling in, I think so. My favorite hip hop group is Fugees, and I think that their the score, that album is pretty amazing. And
you have to send it to me because I've never heard.
Oh, okay. Lauryn Hill, you know who Lauryn Hill is?
Vaguely.
She sings "Killing Me Softly."
Yes.
Okay, so she was in Fugees, which is not the Fugees. I made that mistake. I got shot. It's bad. It's a bad day, bad weekend. But she was in that group at the time, '90s hip hop group. She's a ridiculous rapper, and they would bring in influences like that song was on the record, "Killing Me Softly," and it was just like it was this odd inclusion into the mix of hip hop that felt so nice. And she said when she was growing up, she was inspired by different musical artists that her friends were not listening to at that time, and it was very melodic type of stuff, and so she brought that influence in to the music that she started to create, and you can feel it. There's a difference there, and so that's a perfect example of the value of mixing and matching in art.
Right, exactly.
Carry on. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're good. When you draw from other styles and other art forms, and you are willing to take risks and bend the rules a little bit, you are more likely than not to have something at least interesting, right? But folks like Wynton Marsalis, they saw that taken to the extreme, right? Where guys were only experimenting. You had like so much free jazz, and so much jazz basically just means throw out all the rules. Let's just all get in a circle with our instruments and just do whatever we want. You want to play on your saxophone with drumsticks? Go right ahead. That's equally as valid as blowing through the mouthpiece.
Stick a tuba in your ear? Why not?
Exactly.
Creates a very specific tone.
It was so extreme and so violent and so destructive to the popularity of jazz, because at one point in American history, jazz was the art form. It was the popular music, and all popular music was informed by jazz. Now, not so much. And as jazz became more and more experimental, it has faded into obscurity, and it is now more a niche art form. And so Wynton sees that, and he goes, okay, anything that approaches funk, that approaches fusion music, that's not jazz. That's not real jazz. That's something else. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately,
he created a barrier.
Right. That casts out an entire section of artists within that world, that alienates them and invalidates their efforts. Because when you're as big as Wynton Marsalis is, he's that. In case you didn't know, Jazz at Lincoln Center is like a huge arts center in New York, and they're most famous for their big band program. They're just like huge, like anyone wants to play at Lincoln Center at some point in their lives. So when Wynton Marsalis, the head of Jazz at Lincoln Center, says, hey, if you're a funk guy, you're a fusion guy, you're out, right? Only the blues, swing, and Latin tunes. That's it, mm-hmm. Right? It's hairy. It's like, hey man, like, what about me? Mm-hmm. Like, I like doing swing music too, but my whole deal is electronic fusion. Am I not a real jazz musician now? Should I just go do something else? Right? And it's discouraging. Mm-hmm. So you have to find a balance of like, okay, obviously, if we go way off the deep end, it ceases to become music and is more of a performance art piece, right? And there is a line, obviously, but we must be reticent to cast anyone out and say, hey, you're not really part of us, right? We're not with this group, right?
Yeah. And it's a leg up for the people who do think in divergent ways, I think, because you're always going to have the people who aren't open-minded enough, which being open-minded is synonymous with creativity for me on a psychological level, like being open to experience and thoughts that are from different universes. You know, you have this one over here and you're like, this is a spoon, and this is a painting, and this is a giraffe. How do I turn that into a song? If people who are less open in their minds don't have those thoughts, and that's what makes creative people unique.
Right.
And so when you have people like who you're talking about who will create barriers, that's an opportunity for somebody who is more open to step in and delete barriers, right?
Right.
But it's also very I guess, I don't know. I'm interested to hear what your opinion is of what the downfall is of having those barriers.
Well, golly.
But you can also finish your other thought.
No, I just wanted to put a disclaimer that I have nothing but respect for Wynton Marsalis.
Oh, okay.
And I think he's a fantastic musician. And Wynton, if you're watching this, please know that I don't mean to be derogatory towards you, and I think you're wonderful. So please keep doing what you're doing. You've done so much to promote jazz education across America and across the world, and I can only thank you for that.
Yeah. No, it's I take that as a critique of something that you see is interesting and maybe a little bit negative, but you hold that within the greater sphere of how positive it is, his influence, all of the good things that he's done, which I think is so important.
But see, in contrast with Wynton, you've got guys like Robert Glasper, who is Houston. He's from Houston. He's a piano player. Wynton did I say Wynton plays trumpet?
I forget.
Yeah, he's a trumpet player.
Okay.
Not that that's important. I mean, it is important.
I just assume these guys play every instrument that exists.
Well, they can,
Hammer, dulcimer, sure.
It's so funny that you say that, because I just saw a video of Corey Henry's. You know that song "Crazy" by Gnarls Barkley?
Yeah.
Does that make me crazy? Yeah, they did Corey Henry's group did a cover of that song, and they posted it on YouTube. And they got this guy who comes up and he takes a hammer dulcimer solo.
That's interesting. For that song especially.
It's awesome.
Wow.
It is so cool. Yeah, I'll have to send you the link.
For anyone who doesn't know what a hammer dulcimer is, it's a very melodic, almost Indian sounding instrument where you take these little...
It's a Middle Eastern instrument.
Yeah, you take these little hammers and hit strings, and you probably
They look like toothbrushes.
Yeah. Or even like piano hammers, maybe a little bit ish, but you hit on these strings, and you've probably heard it in music before and you didn't realize what instrument it was, but it's this beautiful sound. But definitely not traditionally well put for "Crazy" by Sparkly. That's interesting. It's a good example, though. It's like when you see that happen, it's like, oh my gosh, I can do creative things like this too. My friends hate me because I'm doing toothpaste paintings, but when I see something like this, it inspires me that I can continue to do this, that somebody out there thinks with an open enough mind to do something as sort of ridiculous as what I'm trying to do, which is so good.
Mm-hmm. And I am of the belief that people who aren't afraid to be losers and a little weird and ridiculous are the people who create the most earnest and the most emotionally impactful art. I mean, everyone thought Van Gogh was an idiot when he was alive, and now everyone thinks he's like the greatest ever. I mean, look, every painting he made was just, but he thought his paintings were worthless. He was like, I'm stupid, right? So
the more I've learned about history, the more I realize that what the present day calls a loser, the future will call historically divergent. And I think that is something that we have to remember, because if you're different and people are making you feel inferior because of that, it is possibly because they don't have a creative, or they don't have an open enough mind to understand what you're trying to do. It's highly possible that is the case.
So I think, to start to answer your question about the benefits versus harms of those quote unquote barriers, is I was talking about Robert Glasper, and he's a jazz keys player, and he's also a producer. He's a hip hop producer, and he works very closely with a lot of guys out of LA, and he is from the Miles Davis school of thought. Miles Davis said that the next great jazz musician would come out of hip hop, right? So, I mean, he was on something else when he said that, because he was like way off into his, spiritual journey into the weirdness of free jazz and all that craziness. But
was that accepted at the time, or was it how much pushback did he get for saying that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I know Robert Glasper says that jazz is the mother and the father of hip hop. And I think he's the one other person I would point to after Wynton to say that guy does a lot for jazz education and promotion of jazz as an art form in the world, because he does so much outreach to like make sure people understand the roots that jazz has, the hold that jazz has on everything that we do in music. And he has a much more inclusive approach, I think, because he grew up in Houston. Like, Houston, it's like the slums. It's like, not literally the slums, it's Texas. But Houston's the armpit of Texas. It's not a nice, I mean, there's parts of it that are nice, and then you walk 2 blocks over and it's the not nice part of town. So he understands
it's like not the worst armpit, but it's an armpit nonetheless.
Right. He understands hip hop in a more intimate way than Wynton does, because Wynton, he comes from a much more prim and proper tradition, of the New Orleans school of jazz, where sure, swamp water runs through his veins, but he's definitely didn't grow up when hip hop was big. Robert Glasper did. And so Glasper, he approaches things with, soft barriers. Like, obviously there's a difference between jazz and hip hop, right? I can't say that jazz is hip hop and hip hop is jazz. And some artists want to do that. They want to say all barriers are dumb and all labels are dumb and all art is the same. And it's
jazz
like, no.
is Korean pop.
There's got to be a line, right? Like, you have to understand that there's a difference between 2 art forms, and I like my art form more than I like your art forms, maybe. But at the end of the day, they are all art forms. So he comes at it with I think what are more soft barriers. Like, hey, you got to understand, jazz is, your music's granddaddy, right? You got to understand that this is what it is because of the influence of this, but this is its own thing, right? And he's willing to accept influences and kind of let things evolve, versus, the Wynton school thought is like, hey, that's not what we're doing here. What we're doing is what we're doing, and we've been doing it this way for the past 50 years, and you can live with it or you can go do something else, right?
Well, I think what happens is when something starts out small, like when in the beginnings of jazz, there was probably a rebellious side to that, to what it felt like and the way that it was perceived by culture. And I say that not because I have some vast knowledge of jazz, that's why you're here, but I say that because that's how everything starts, right? Starts out as this rebellious other, and everybody's like, and the more open people start to accept it and be okay with it. And then it becomes the establishment to an extent. And then once it becomes the establishment, people take that to be the normal thing that is supposed to happen. And then you entrench yourself in that ideology, which I think is maybe what he was doing a little bit. He's entrenched himself in the traditional ideology of the thing, and we have to preserve this. And if you go too far down that road, you have an inability to allow it to continue to evolve and continue to have the rebellious side, which is so important for anything to continue to grow. And
one of the harmful byproducts of Wynton's casting out, so to speak, of, hey, all that you're doing is not real jazz, is he's turned swing into a conservative art form. he's
I
made
hate
swing.
conservative swing. That's the
So
worst.
swing music used to be the sound of freedom, right? It was new. It was bouncy. It was light. It was electrifying,
Get
right?
that,
People
kids.
listened to swing music and they wanted to tap their toes. They wanted to stomp their feet. They wanted to go out and dance, and that's what swing music is supposed to do. And
that was like the death metal of the time. They were like, "Oh my gosh, this is I don't know how to handle I just have to flail. I'm gonna jump off the stage. I'm gonna punch somebody." They had people on TV shows saying, "We can't do this. The parents are getting scared because their kids are listening to devil music." I'm probably a little off base there. Did I go too far?
Every new art form, every new form of music in America for the longest time was like, oh, that's of the devil, right? Rock music is demonic, and they do the devil horns and the 666, and they use tritones, which are banned by the church. They weren't banned by the church. And all this good stuff.
That's so funny. Banned by the church.
We'll talk about tritones.
It was funny because I'm a Christian. As a Christian, I hear that, and that's the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my life. It's so funny. Like a tone banned church. By the church.
Right.
It's funny.
So anyway,
carry on.
So swing has gone from being the freest form of expression in America, the representation of our values of freedom and liberty and individuality, and it's become cookie cutter. Everyone knows how to do 700 different ride patterns, right? They can do Tony Williams, they can do Buddy Rich, they can do Max Roach, they can do, whatever, right? Trumpet players can imitate Miles Davis, they can imitate, God, I'm suddenly drawing a blank. I'm more of a saxophone guy. Another trumpet player. So. Maynard Ferguson. I'm sorry.
You're running out of jazz names. I mean,
saxophone.
To be fair, you spouted
off
like 35 names, so it's completely okay if you run out of names.
Saxophonists can imitate Dexter Gordon. They can imitate Paul Desmond. They can imitate, John Coltrane to an extent. Coltrane's improvisations got crazy towards the end of his days. Like, wow. They can imitate Sonny Rollins. Charlie Parker. We ran swing into the ground, and then instead of letting people pull their influence in, winds were going. So, as a byproduct of that, swing became less popular among jazz circles, and now the popular thing to do is Latin tunes. We do lots of sambas and lots of bossa novas. Less bossa nova, more samba, more like, aggressive Latin music, like more Cuban, less Brazilian. And then we also like odd time signatures now. It's very common among
that wasn't always sort of a staple of jazz?
No.
Interesting.
No. Jazz used to be, you had your waltzes, of course, and you had your Afro-Cubans, which were triplet feel, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, and of course in swing it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. You got your the swing. Yeah. Very simplified, but the longer things go on, and the more conservative and the more in the past that swing was, the more people were like, what if we did something in 7? What if we counted to 7? Like 3 plus 4? Would that be weird? Right?
30 people's heads exploded in the meeting.
Like, what if we did 7 plus 6? So 4 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3. Like, ooh, okay. And now we're thinking like in terms of like, what if we did polyrhythms, right? What if I had 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, right? It's like I have 4 in one hand, 3 in the other hand, 1.
And for anybody who's not a musician, it's like the traditional direction you're going to go with your time signature, which is just the number you count to, is just going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. You might count to 3, and in most genres, that's about it.
Or 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1,
or 6, right? So you guys like 6, 8, but it's it creates a distinct feel for the song. You change the time signature and you change the song dramatically. It's a big
Exactly.
difference. Then you have people, then you had, like he's explaining, then you had people who came around and was like, let's count to 7. And even as a drummer, when you count to 7, after you've learned to count to 4 for so long, it is insane. It's one of the craziest feelings. And you have to count again.
I've had drummers cuss me out because I've written pieces in like crazy time signatures, and they're like,
what are you doing?
What are you doing? You are stupid. This is stupid.
Jazz, man.
Stop it.
All right, we're going to count to 48 today.
No, that's just a multiple of 4.
We're going to count to 49 today.
We're going to count to pi. So 3, 4 with a stutter.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
1, 2,
My
3,
wife had to
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. It's like,
I was gonna get into some more time signature stuff, but I don't want to circle back in on ourselves too much. I don't want to get too
anyway. Yeah,
this
is really niche. Anyway, the point of this is the artist will find a way. So creating barriers creates a restraint, and you know what artists do when given restraints? They work around them, find ways to be different and to make their art engaging and enjoyable within the restraints or without the restraints. So when Marcellus says, you know, you can only swing, and jazz artists are like, no thanks. And so there's a dichotomy now of new musicians who still have an appreciation for the old, but they want to do something different, and they not necessarily. I mean, there are so many artists now, like, who have all manner of albums out, and they're jazz musicians, and not a single song on there is swung. And to an old head who has only listened to swing music his entire life, his whole identity is built around big band, he's thinking that's like outrageous to him. He's like, that's not jazz. But to us, that's where the spirit of jazz has moved to. That's where jazz is about freedom. And the artist found a way to move forward without the old.
The establishment now is what you're saying, which is like jazz is it's the free form art. It's the piece of music. It's where musicians go and they're like, man, I'm tired of trying to play, you know, rock music or pop music.
Progressions over and over again.
When you progress as a musician, you go, okay, what's next? And you go, oh, I hear jazz is like the thing that you're supposed to do now. And so it's the free, but so I guess there are still people who want to keep it pretty conservative.
Absolutely. There's always going to be people who are like, I want to stay back in the old, right? Because that's the way it's always been. But it hasn't always been that way, right?
Yeah.
Things change.
Yeah.
So we got to be careful about the changes that we make, because those will have ripple effects down the road, and who knows what kind of craziness will come from the music we're making today. But at the same time, we can't cling, we can't clutch our pearls, all our life and be like, gasp, like this is so.
So that's why it's important to have diversity and the inputs that you're putting into your brain, inputtingly. But another part that I want to focus on is this whole equation is when the things that we look at on a daily basis are inspirations to us. That they're meaning that whenever we're scrolling through Instagram, we're taking that into our brain, or whenever we're listening to Spotify, we're taking that into our brain, and it's falling into this stew of, our metaphorical creative stomach of influences, and that allows us to be who we are as a creator. So on some level, we are naturally going to do that. Every creator is naturally going to do that on some level or another. There's a spectrum. I think the more, conservative types would take in things that are closer to home, while the more open-minded types will take in things way outside of their bubble. So I guess the question is, how do you strategically maximize the goodness that can come from that? Because I think we can fall into our groove, be inspired by the things that we're normally inspired by, and we miss out on some meaningful influences. So I think that this comes down to a little bit of structure in your inspirations, that you're saying, I'm going to go watch a documentary about Picasso today, or I'm going to go I'm going to read a book about, 15th century paintings, and intentionally allow that to sink into my stew of creativity.
Well, yeah, I think it's important to force yourself to absorb and to consume new art, and art that might not necessarily be the most comfortable for you, right? Like sometimes I'll find myself forcing myself to listen to albums, because I'm a musician, so everything I do is music, that I didn't like. Like, okay, I didn't like it, but it was real. Like, it wasn't like I didn't like it because it wasn't my bag. Let me listen to it again, right? Or like,
and you can learn a lot from NSYNC, you know.
Absolutely. But there are so many times when there's artists who are inspired. I would say, don't limit what your influences are. Like, just absorb all of it, even the stuff that you would think would be bad, because the bad stuff, you can still absorb what you know you liked, what you didn't like about it. Like, okay, I know I didn't like that, so I won't do that. When it's me putting my thoughts on, when I'm, pen to paper, I'm not going to do the stuff that I didn't like, right? You can still absorb that.
Well, so think about why you don't like it as well.
Right. Absorb everything you can. And that maximizes your creative output, because you have more things that you're taking in than just what you've decided to take in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think some of the best art comes from stuff that sounds stupid. Like Layla Marshall, one of my favorites. I mentioned her earlier. My favorite album by her is called Babel, Baabel, like Babel, like a goat.
Okay, and so all the instruments are sheeps. That's what I'm getting from this.
So the concept is she's trying to create an album that screams out into the world the same way that a goat does.
Wow. All right. So that's okay. So hold on, we got to stick on that. So she picked a starting point. She picked this. So I think of there's a Snarky Puppy album that is based around all of the forests around, I think, the world or in America, I forget. And so each song is sort of connected to a forest and, like, I guess the feeling of the forest. It's very interesting. So this is similar to that. It's not starting from a place of what melodic brilliance can I create. It's, oh, I saw a goat standing in a tree and I heard the goat make a baa sound. I'm going to make an album about that, which I think is exactly what I'm trying to advocate for. Only be inspired by goats. That's what I'm trying to say. Carry on.
Yes, absolutely. No, but see, like, if I were to pitch an album that way to Joe Blow, who listens to Katy Perry on his commute to work, he would be like, okay, sure.
Good luck. That's cool, man. Good luck.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, great. Yes. Yeah, I'm so proud. Like, enjoy. Yeah. I'm so glad you enjoy that.
Like, but you do have it. Like, you have a job, right? Like, are you stable? Are you? Can you hold down your house and your family and everything?
Like, no, you don't understand. Like, this is actually like a really good album. Like, this album changed my life when I heard it. He'd be like, the one where she's trying to emulate the emotions that a goat is feeling when it screams. That album? Yes, that album. Like,
sure, I'll listen to that later. Thanks for the Thanks for the
Yes,
recommendation,
absolutely.
Austin.
But it's like people who aren't afraid to be weird, who aren't afraid to be dumb, who aren't afraid to look silly, they create earnest things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, like
and
it's
and
almost
part of that,
almost takes an audacity from yourself to question. Well, start off by questioning the way things are, but like it takes an audacity to step outside and be okay with being laughed at or just the weird side eye, like just all the little things that come along with being a divergent thinking person. It's like embracing that feeling and using it. Or
that's one of the things I like about Malcolm Gladwell. Are you familiar with him? He has a podcast called Revisionist History that's just awesome.
He was he's a writer, right? He's got crazy hair.
Yeah, he's got books, and he does have crazy hair. he's got tons of fantastic books. But the thing about he was a reporter before he wrote books, and people are like, dude, you need to write books, and he's like, okay. So his philosophy, most people think about everything is boring, right? Most things are just everyday things are just everyday things.
It's mundane.
There's a few things in life that are interesting, and his philosophy is the opposite of that. His philosophy is everything is interesting. The way this shirt was made is interesting. The way that televisions transmit information is interesting. The influence
you push a button and a signal goes through the wire to the
The influence of the wealthy elite on how golf courses are made is interesting, right? Like everything is interesting, and that's how he channels, and that's how he creates such engaging content, because he finds intrigue in things that you wouldn't think to find intrigue in, right? And this has nothing to do with music, surprisingly enough. Wow, I reached out of my comfort zone to see that.
Excellent. We're doing it.
So, but that's one of the things I love about him. That's why I like listening to his podcast, is because he'll pull up something and throw it in my face, and I'll be like, bruh, this is like totally interesting. Yeah. But how did you figure this out? Like, how did you learn that this is the interesting thing of the week?
Right. Well, Seth Godin, who is I think inspired by Malcolm Gladwell. I think they really like one another, or one likes one at least. Seth Godin has a podcast where he talks about, I guess, creativity and productivity and thinking differently and being different towards the market. And same thing, like he's pulling in facts about situations that happened in the 50s regarding business. And I'm like, where did you get this from? How did you like he done the research? That's what he did. But it's so fascinating to me. I love that. I love people who have done their homework and they figured out a way to apply that to a message that they're trying to share with you. It's a really special thing. And I think that's a great example of being open-minded and allowing inspiration from different places to come in. But carry on. You were saying he pulls things from different areas.
No, that was all I had to say.
Okay, great. Cool. Back to music.
You did mention the word productivity for a second, and I got kind of triggered. Because I see what's the dude's name? Gary Vaynerchuk.
Oh yeah.
He was on Anchor, and he was like the Anchor guy for a long time. Mm-hmm. And like everyone was like, "Is Gary V on Anchor today?" Like, oh my god, like he could be on Anchor today. If he's on Anchor, I want to call in and like see if he could like shout me out or whatever. Yeah. Right. But I follow him on Twitter, and I'm sure what he does works really well. But he's so high intensity all the time. And he's just like yelling at the camera. He's like, right. You have no excuses. You're just like, can we?
He's such an interesting character.
He is really cool. But it's like I just hear like 100% productivity all the time. I just get like my little weird OCD self with all my quirks and productivity issues. I just start to like shriek and shrivel.
Well, when I say interesting, I mean that sort of technically, because for one, I there is a part of him that I really love. I've met him, I've never met somebody that's so present when you speak to him. He's this guy who's running into 48,000 people a day, and he has to shake their hand and give them a hug, and the people are like, "I love you so much," and my dad has cancer, and he has to figure out how to deal with that, and so he's an impressive guy on that level. But what can happen to those types of people is they can sort of be all over the place. They're entrepreneur types. They're just, you're person number 355 I've spoken to today, and that's your number. He is so incredibly present. So that's good. So I like a lot of things about him, but he's not for everybody. He's like, this is why he's interesting, is because he's very polarizing. Mm-hmm. There are people who love him, and then there are people. I literally sat in a room with a group of creators who are, in my opinion, taking him way out of context and just ragging on him, because people can't handle when people don't speak to them in the right way. That makes sense. Like, I think this is a huge issue with like Donald Trump, for example. People they're not okay with him because of the way he speaks, and they miss a lot of other things about him. And so, but he's an example of what I'm talking about, where people will, in the creative realm, hold on, I think are you still there? Hello? Oh, we lost him.
It's not good.
Oh, hello? Oh, test. We're going to do this. We're going to make it through this trial. These are the stormy seas of life. All right, we're back, I think. Oh, heavens. Please hold. And we're back. We had a bit of a conundrum there. There was fire and flames shooting out of computer USB ports, but we're back in act. Oh, Austin's dead. The troubles are not over. So we were talking about Gary Vaynerchuk. What I was saying about him was, what can happen is he's such a popular figure that people will focus in on the Gary Vaynerchuk way of doing business, which he fights against. I don't think he wants that. He even says, I'm a crazy person. You don't necessarily want to do business the way that I do business, which is good on, that's a good thing on him. But I've learned that there are a lot of people who so fall into that. And I was sort of a victim of this for a little bit, that you feel like you're not allowed to take a break, and not necessarily because he said something that says you can't take a break, because he's like, get sleep, but there's this ethos that can happen in your mind, whether it's directly informed or not, that will put you in this box, which is very dangerous. And so I started realizing, the way I need to do business is needs to be a little bit more me-centered. Like, I need a break more than other people need a break, or I need a break in this way, in a way that other people don't need a break. So that's sort of the praise and critique of the Gary Vaynerchuk thing, and how I think it ties into what we're talking about. But you were talking. What were you talking about before we diverted again? Because you were saying, we were talking about Gary Vaynerchuk. You mentioned Gary Vaynerchuk, and then I said things, and then. All right, moving on. So, so I think that the stream of consciousness that we're putting into our brain is incredibly. It's important that we're intentional about that.
Yes. We were talking about how my point was that you don't really need to. I mean, obviously, have a filter on because what goes down in the well comes up in the bucket, right? My dad said that. What's down in the well comes up in the bucket. What's inside manifests itself. Yeah. At some point. So if you're looking at snuff films online, is probably not the best thing to absorb into your creative process, right? But my point, within reason, is don't necessarily limit the things that you absorb into yourself as a creator, as a person, as a creative, and as a person who wants to say things into the world, because you can always be inspired. I mean, gosh, I mean, modern films can still be informed by Shakespeare, right? And at the same time, they can be informed by Scary Movie 5, right? I mean, you can get goodness out of everything and anything that you decide to get goodness out of. Of course, there are some things that are just horrible. Like, I don't know, pornography. Like, I don't know where you'd get any artistic inspiration from that. But, I mean, yeah, like, you can still find, like, if you're watching, like, I don't know, Little Einsteins, like a kid's TV show, you can take inspiration from the storyboard, from the way that they orchestrate the overall arc of the story, because everything has a story. Music has a story. A painting has a story. Movies.
And if you open your mind, you will find things that you gravitate to in the creation process, I think.
And when I'm saying this, I'm speaking as much to myself as anyone else, more so, I guess, to myself than anyone else, because one of my big deals is, like, I have my things that I like, and I have to have my things, and I can't deal with other things that I don't like. Like, if someone's like, I mean, obviously, if you show me something new and I like it, like, awesome. But if someone shows me something that I don't immediately latch onto, it's like, yeah, okay, that's cool. Awesome. All right. Okay, cool. Thank you. You can turn. Oh yeah, no, I think I heard this one already. Yeah, no, you're versus, critically listening and thinking and, like, actually being engaged.
Like to the Malcolm Gladwell point, everything is interesting. It's your perception of it that makes it uninteresting. So the question is, how do you open your perception to the things that are objectively interesting and make them subjectively interesting to you?
That's a good question. I don't know if I'll ever figure that out.
I think it's a matter of focus. I think it's a matter of presence, right? So when you watch good example, okay, so this is a great example. If you're watching a comedian and you're, like, doing the dishes and you just kind of hear it across the room, and the comedian is, like, your favorite comedian, right? And when you first found that comedian, you had such a special experience with that comedian. They made you laugh, and you peed your pants and vomited. It was a great time.
Wow.
But now you listen to them and you're like, every now and then you'll get a little chuckle. And some of that is because maybe you've heard their stuff before, or you're used to what it is. The flair of the new relationship has gone. The romance is gone. You're past the honeymoon phase. But also, I think part of it is your presence of mind towards that thing, because a lot of times you can stop washing the dishes, go sit down, and be intentional towards saying to yourself, I'm going to laugh at this person. I want to enjoy it like I know I can. And you will start to find, that's how you find the nuance, right? That's how you take it from a wide angle level and turn it into a molecular level.
I thought you were going to go a completely different direction with that analogy.
Oh, okay. Well, was the other direction better? Because I'll go that way.
No. I thought this was really interesting, the way people's brains works. When you said, I'm in the kitchen and I've got a recording of my favorite comedian on, right? My favorite comedy routine. I thought you were going to be like, it's a frame of mind, right? Like, you could be doing the dishes and being away, and you have it on the background. Since you know that comedian and you know his routine, you laugh at all the jokes. But if it was a new comedian who's maybe a bit raunchier than you're used to, or maybe a bit more anti-joke centric than you're used to, he's not the guy you like, because you're not fully engaged with it, because you're just doing the dishes and it's just on in the background, you're not necessarily as receptive.
Right, yeah.
I think both analogies work.
That's a great point.
I just thought it was a funny thing to note.
That's a great point. And I think that, once again, it comes down to you focusing on trying to pull out the value in that person's routine. Now, the question is, how deep can you go divergent can you get? My mind seems to be pretty open because I've come across.
I don't know. I could show you some pretty crazy stuff.
Right. It's like there are things that you have a very hard time getting over the barrier of like, this is not my thing. But if you, let's say you listen to that thing on repeat every day, and you're looking like you're making the face like that would just be the most horrible experience ever.
No. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I have a relevant XKCD comic to pull up for you.
Oh, okay. So
keep talking.
Hold on to that because I want to hear it. So you listen to that thing every day on repeat, and by day 4 or 5, you're starting to be more okay with it. You're starting to like it. Oh, this is interesting, right? I think that is how things tend to work. I don't know where the limit of that is though, because like I lean towards thinking that you can like almost any food if you eat it over and over and discipline yourself. If you you make it a habit, you can like your taste buds will
like
start
becoming a vegan.
Yeah, like becoming a vegan, right? So
you train yourself to not like meat anymore.
Right.
It's just psychologically, you just turn off that part of your brain, even though meat is delicious and I'll never, ever give it up.
And it works in the opposite way because, for example, like sodas, your body, for all sorts of different reasons, you crave the soda and every day you drink it and you're like, okay, it's like this nice mid-level of this is really good. But if you, for 2 weeks, say, I'm not going to drink soda, you come back to that soda, 2 things are going to happen. One, it's going to be extremely sweet. You're going to be like, this is outrageous. Like, why did I like this? Like Mountain Dew to me tastes like motor oil. It's ridiculous. Like it's just so much. And 2, I don't know what motor oil tastes like, but I'm just going to assume that's what it.
I was hoping not.
I'm just going to, it works sort of. It's a semi well-founded analogy. But the other thing that happens is you stop craving it. And then you look at that thing that you now have had some distance from, and it's like a Diet Coke is the thing that you once loved so dearly. You look at it now and you go, ugh, that's so. You have
like
zero
I used
craving.
to listen to orchestral trailer music when I was younger.
Okay.
When I was like 11, like 12 or 13.
Yeah.
I had this obsession with this group called Two Steps from Hell.
Okay.
At a guy named Thomas Bergeson, and it was a duo. It was one other guy. I can't remember his name. But they literally just – and I ended up hearing the trailer music in trailers that I actually would see when I went to the movies. It was funny. But I thought the epic style of music, those YouTube videos are like 10 hours of epic music. It's like, yes. It's like I would just put it on and I would study or whatever for my homework, or I would play video games online or whatever, and just like have this epic music in the background. It's like so awesome. And now I listen to that music and I almost gag because like this is so cheesy. How can you listen to this? How did you like this?
Oh, this lacks intellectual nuance. How did I ever tolerate such peasantry?
But you know what? Those things, they inform your taste now. Like the kid who doesn't eat anything but chicken strips and French fries and chocolate milk at the restaurant, no matter what restaurant they go to, they'll grow up and they'll probably hate that stuff. And they'll probably be way more into – I mean, I'm just speculating because I don't know anything about psychology. But, I'm assuming that if you eat the same thing over and over and over and over again, you have 2 options. Either you never expand past that thing, and you're like the one guy who ate like a Happy Meal every day, like 3 times a day for his entire life. And it's like, or you expand past that and you realize, wow, chicken strips and French fries are probably the most boring meal I could ever eat. Why would there's at least like a mac and cheese every now and again.
Oh, So, well, I was gonna add, but you basically added it. I think that you're absolutely correct. I think that you're going to go one of 2 directions. I think that you're going to be actually more disgusted by diverse food types, which applies to art. Everyone just apply all of this to art as we're speaking. You're going to either be more
This whole conversation applies to art.
Right, exactly.
All of it. Full stop.
You're either going to be disgusted by different by exotic food types, right? You'll watch the National Geographic channel and they're like, this is the Chinese food market. They're eating a live squid that sticks to your, like, if you don't put the right kind of sauce on it, it'll stick to your throat and you'll die, which is actually, there's some truth to that. But anyway, you either go that direction or you go, I'm sick of this and I want to make a difference. And then you become, but like I have people in my family who, when I mention the idea of eating like a squid leg or something, like I've had squid jerky before and it's delicious.
Really?
Yes.
I've never even heard of squid jerky.
It came from
Where does one acquire
Japan?
Such an item? Yeah, I have to go to Japan. I can't like go to my local Asian market or whatever, like an H Mart.
You might be able to go to what they call the dark web. I'm just kidding. I think you can probably get it online. But
is this whole conversation just a plug for what is it? Unfriended dark web?
Unfriended. What is that?
Do you remember that movie, the stupid movie called Unfriended, where the whole movie was a Skype conversation, and they had a friend that committed suicide, and she haunted their conversation, like killed them all or whatever?
I never watched that because, quite frankly,
I never watched it either.
The premise did not seem too enthusiastic. It didn't make me enthusiastic about
it. Curse of Skype.
Right. Now, I mean, I didn't want to. I want to be able to actually talk to you without being paralyzed in fear.
Having yourself possessed and put your hand in a blender while your friends watch.
I hate it when that happens, you know?
The other, so they're making a new one that's coming out this year called Unfriended. It's either Deep Web or Dark Web, I can't remember. But this guy finds this laptop in this cafe. It's got all these pictures, and basically it's like this guy, it turns out he's a human trafficker or whatever. And so this guy like finds all of his like paper trail on the deep web or whatever. And so
it's an American story, really.
No, exactly. And so all the friends get killed in horrible ways because this guy knows that he has his laptop and he's coming after him, and all of his, sex trafficking friends are like human traffickers are like coming after them and killing them all and whatever. And it's like there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
But it takes place on a Skype conversation, much like the one we're having right now. Mm-hmm. Anyway, you mentioned dark web, and so I was like, "It's 2018. Are you plugging a Blumhouse movie right now, James?"
Yeah, that's the whole premise of this entire conversation.
Are you shilling for Blumhouse Productions?
Yeah, they're paying me. They're sending me merch. This is
Unfriended merch. That's my favorite.
Yeah, it's high quality material. But anyway, what I was saying was that when I mentioned that to my family, that like the idea of eating a squid leg or avocados even, or what's another one? There's another one that I mentioned, the other quinoa, right? I love quinoa. He's gone again. I'll keep carrying on until he comes back. Quinoa is fantastic. And all these different things that if you live in California, it's very normal. It's vegan. You're in a land where there's a lot of vegans, and there are things that are culturally normal. Yeah, I was just carrying on until you came back.
Sorry.
No, you're good. I was saying that if you live in a place like California, there are things that are normal that are not normal in South Carolina, for example. And so when I mention eating things like avocados or quinoa,
avocado toast,
or oh my gosh,
quintessential millennial items.
It's very important.
We just love to kill Chili's and Applebee's and eat our avocado toast.
Yes, and McDonald's. And so where was that? So if you like these things, there are people around you that will think that you are mildly insane for liking these things if you're in the wrong circles. But he's gone again. But if you don't, I forget where I was going with that. The point is that the point is that people will criticize you for being creative in your choices.
Mm-hmm. Also, going back to the whole if you do the same thing over and over again thing, the comic I sent you touched on that point, and how anyone who's like deep into a thing becomes a connoisseur of that thing.
Okay, so break that
No matter
down.
how ridiculous it is. So the point he illustrates, I'll read the comic to you, and you could kind of post an image of it when this comes up in the video in the podcast. It's an XKCD, and you have two characters who are stick people. You have White Hat, who wears a white hat, and Cue Ball, who wears no hat. He's just a stick figurehead.
Okay.
It's a circle.
I'm in.
So White Hat says, "How do you stand this cheap wine?" And Cue Ball says, "Wine all tastes the same to me." And White Hat says, "You just never had good wine. If you paid more attention, you'd realize there's a whole world out there." And Cue Ball says, "Well, that's true of anything. Wine, house music, fonts, ants, Wikipedia signatures, Canadian surrealist porn. Spend enough time with any of them and you'll become a snobby connoisseur." So White Hat says, "But some things that do have more depth than others." And Cue Ball says, "If you locked people in a box for a year with 500 still frames of Joe Biden eating a sandwich, by the end they'd be adamant that some were great and some terrible." And White Hat says, "You're exaggerating." And Cue Ball says, "Oh, really?" And then it cuts to a year later, and it's just a bunch of speech bubbles coming out of this box. It says, "Sure, most closed-mouth frames are boring, but in number 415, the way the man's jaw frames the mayo on his hand is pure perfection." And then it gets cut off. "What a surprise, you praising a mayo frame. Listening to you, I think there was nothing else in the sandwich. Frankly, the light hitting Joe Biden's collar through the lettuce would put number 242 in my top 10, even if he had no mayo on his hand at all." It's just about connoisseur, being a snobby, whatever, about anything you do.
It's about being a hipster of anything, right? No, that's what. Yeah, it's a great example of what we do. I think that type of conversation is rather important, but it can also turn into a parody of itself in a sense, like it is in the comic.
Also, one thing that's really fun that I love is a type of meme on the internet. Is people post jazz reharmonizations of videos on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
So, like, you'll have a guitarist or a bass player with seven strings.
Like a more sophisticated auto-tune.
Not really, no.
Oh, okay. Like the auto-tune videos, I mean. Right, where
they don't auto-tune the video. They harmonize the video on their instrument. They play along to the video.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I see. See, I was thinking of those videos where it's like, hide your kids, hide your wife. Like, it's like a little...
No, that's like Songify. That's different.
Songify, there we go.
Yeah, so...
But people call it auto-tuning it, which I know that's not the technical term. Like, I know the technical term for auto-tuning is an effect that you put on your voice, but
right.
That's what people call it. Anyway.
I'm trying to find this video. There's like videos of like people. Anyway, you just take like a Simpsons clip, like I guarantee you, multiple people have done. The steamed hams video. Do you know steamed hams?
No, I should though. Sounds great. I've seen somebody do this on this. What I think you're talking about on drums, where somebody will be talking, and they'll make the drum beat or the fill go with the talking.
Right. So look, I think this is it.
Well, Seymour, I made it. Despite your reviews. Lieutenant Chalmers, welcome. I hope you're prepared for lunch in a moment.
It's quite satisfying.
Oh, you guys! My roast is ruined. What if I would have purchased fast food and disguised as my own cook?
Anyway, I don't want to take up too much time, but the idea is that he takes like the dialogue and he plays it on his guitar. It's really funny.
Well, that's an example of how performance arts and being stage plays and TV shows, they're very much musical in their execution. Like
yes, and the other thing is you repeat with the way they get that effect, the way he achieves being able to play a scene from The Simpsons on the guitar is he just play like a 5-second section of it over and over again until he has the rhythm and the melody in his head.
It's just muscle memory at that point.
And you just hear it over and over again, and it just becomes, how when you say a word over and over again, it sounds really, really weird.
Right. Yep.
It's the same thing with a clip of a video.
Like the word
you just hear it. Right.
I've always thought that words are so interesting because they're just sounds coming out of our mouths in theory. We just know what they mean, and they sort of they transform into something very specific to us that is a word. It's a thing that we associate with something. But the word the or the or that or hammer, like hammer, a weird word.
Hammer.
Like it's not even the more weird words that I care about, like aardvark. Obviously, that's a strange word. Oh, that's fine.
Okay,
Aardvark.
listen, stop. Let me start you right there.
Okay.
If I took a recording, a clip of you saying aardvark, obviously that's a weird word.
Right.
And I just like put it in my headphones and just played it.
Yeah.
Played that over and over again. I could probably figure out a way to replicate it on the piano, and then I could like just play a video of you saying that on the piano.
That
with me on
sounds
the
like a
piano
great Twitter video that I would retweet. So look into that.
That's how they get that is they repeat it over and over and over again. And that's the same thing with the connoisseur thing. Is like you're just like you have 500 still frames of Joe Biden eating a sandwich and nothing else, and you lock people in a room for a year, and they just intensely scrutinize every aspect of every still frame of this man just eating a sandwich. When otherwise you just like, it's just a picture of a man eating a sandwich.
Yeah.
No, this isn't just any ordinary picture of a sandwich. This is frame number 242.
Mm-hmm. I love how we're writing on this theme that we started with a second ago, which was that everything is interesting. Mm-hmm. If you are able to tune your mind to it. And we're going all sorts of like we're going into like scrutinizing pictures because we're snobby art people, but it started in a place of like if you want to appreciate something, then
all people who are interested in random things are snobs. Don't listen to a word they say about anything.
They can't be trusted.
All art is subjective. There's no objective morality. Art is worthless.
Yeah.
People just don't. Be an engineer. Be a doctor.
Yeah, they're all freaking socialist communists. That's what they are.
Go get a business degree. That's what you really want.
That's what you need. Get out of your lesbian dance theory.
Lesbian dance theory. That's got to be a fantastic band name. I gotta write that down.
It's a great name.
Lesbian dance theory.
I heard one the other day, but I can't remember what it was. So that's a letdown. So another thing.
I got a good one.
Oh, okay.
Himalayan pink mountain salt grinder.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. They'd have to acronym that for sure, but that's beautiful. Okay, so I wanted to. The next thing that I was interested in sort of diving into is within the realm of diversifying your creative influences.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are different types of inspiration where you have your daily inspin. This is semi well-rounded. I'm just kind of spouting off, but there are the normal everyday inspirations that we take in when we're scrolling through Instagram, we're listening to Spotify. If you're a musician or you're watching on YouTube, you're watching covers, you're watching amazing performances. There's the normal level of inspiration, and there's a meter of intensity on how much it inspires you. And like on the higher end, these are the things where you watch a video and you're like, I've never seen this before, and I'm going to integrate this into my life somehow. On the lower end, it's like it's your it's your everyday influence. And it's just something that you like. You probably know you like it. You've been listening to it for a while. At one point, it could have been high on the meter. Now it's just, it's in a pocket. But I also think that there are higher level of inspirational experiences. Mm-hmm. I guess this can go all the way up to the inspirational presence of God type of experience. But it can also...
You're on LSD. You're just lying on your back and you're like... this is it. This is the inspirational apex right here.
This is the gateway to the ether.
I'm so inspired.
There's that, or there's also going to, like, for me, if I go see like even a play, I'm not much into like musicals and plays. I rarely go, but this is kind of the point that I'm so inspired by different forms of art that I could go to a musical, some sort of small town semi small town rendition of the Phantom of the Opera. Oh, we can get into that. I know we had.
Careful.
We were having a little Twitter conversation about that the other day. But I could go to this event and have an experience that is really powerful for me because it's just well done. It hit the right buttons. I was at the right point in my life, and the people who performed are just so masterful over their craft. And it's something that I come out of that going, okay, I'm going to do something with this. This is big. You know, obviously I'm not going to try to play Raoul in Phantom of the Opera, but I'm going to go, that's his name, right? Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm going to integrate this into something else I'm doing, into my photography, which might sound weird to some people, but like I'm going to find a way to integrate that into my art. And it's a moving experience. So I guess what I'm trying to advocate for is that it's important to schedule those types of experiences in, and that they also be divergent in their nature.
Now, having said that, what about art forms that you just absolutely do not get?
You don't get, okay.
Make no sense at all. Because I consider myself to be pretty open-minded, right?
Mm-hmm.
I listen to forms of art I listen to music that my dad is like, this is dumb. Like, why are you into this, right? He's like, I don't get it.
That's
right?
The plight of the creative.
People are allowed to not get things, right? That's the other thing. Is like people get so personally offended nowadays. If you don't like what they like people are like, oh, Beyonce is the greatest of all time.
I have a theory for why that is. I think it's because it's such a rich, meaningful experience to us that when other people don't get it, it's like it's offensive to the sensibilities. How could you not?
Okay, so when someone takes a dump on what you like and say this is garbage, you are dumb for liking this. Yeah. That's when I get personally offended because then it becomes a personal attack on my taste, right? But if someone says, "Hey, this is in my bag," like I just don't like it. I'm not going to be like, you have to like it. How can you not like it?
Well,
right?
for me, what it is like not a sort of anger like you have to like it. It's I want to figure out how to get you to get this. Like I need you to understand how important this is, and it's so horribly unfathomable to me that you don't get it. Which is it's a silly mindset, but it's funny how that works.
The other side of that coin is absolutely like when people don't give it a chance, right? Yeah. Like when I'm like trying to show you something that I think is really cool and you turn it off. Like you turn it off before you even get to the good part, right? Like it's like you're not even giving it a chance. You're not even gonna listen to it. Like let's listen to the whole song, right? Yeah. I'm not asking you to like it. I'm just asking you to try it, right? What was I saying?
Well, that's I don't know what you're saying, Austin. It was great, though.
We're talking
Everything you're saying was beautiful.
We're talking about Phantom of the Opera, right? And you were saying how. Oh, yeah. What about things that I don't get, right? So, and people are allowed to not get things.
Oh, you're saying it's almost like what you're doing is what you're I think you're saying your dad is doing, but on another level. It's like you're pretty open-minded, but
to his credit, my dad is very open-minded as well. Sure. He listens to a lot of stuff that I would consider to be out there.
Sure.
But I listen to more out there stuff than he does.
So is there some sort of art form that you considered to
dancing?
Yeah, there we go. Okay. Dancing.
Okay. I have a friend who's a ballet dancer. I love ballet. Ballet is beautiful, but I love ballet because of the music, right? And the dancing is really cool. Like I like choreography. Hip hop is awesome. Hip hop dancing, I'm totally can get. My brother was a hip hop. He wanted to be a hip hop dancer when he was little. Very, very cool. They're very talented individuals. I was part of an experimental music ensemble in college a couple semesters ago called the New Music Ensemble. And their philosophy is basically just free, just whatever it is that you do, follow it to completion, follow that path and see where it leads you. And then once you're done with it, learn from it and move on. It's very cool, very relaxed. It's less of an ensemble where we're performing together and more of a class where the professor just kind of like is like, okay, what are you working on? What idea is this? Okay, how do you develop this idea? Okay, maybe you don't want to, maybe to fill this theme more, you want to be less busy here and, bring the dynamics up or down. I don't want to get like doing the technical jargon with you, but like essentially it was like a class. So I actually wasn't part of the ensemble. I kind of sat in on a couple of the classes because I thought it was interesting when I had free time, and I didn't often have free time. And then at the end of the semester, they had a concert, and they didn't have enough pieces, so they needed to fill time. So they contacted me. They're like, "Hey, you got any pieces that you could possibly contribute?" So I had a couple electronic.
I'm working on a little thing about a goat.
About a goat. I had a couple of electronic music that I had pretty much completed, and they were just sitting on my hard drive and not doing anything. So I was like, sure, I'll just throw these at you. How do you like them? And part of the concert was that the new music ensemble was partnered with the dance school at the college, and these dancers, they wrote choreographies to all of my pieces of music that they would, so that the performance was the recording that I had made, and then the dancers dancing to that. And I don't know, but like this whole new age kind of dancing is just like, it's all cliche because the dancer, it looks like a very painful form of yoga. Like they're always like doing.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, great, but like, where's the rhythm? Where is your? I mean, you're doing the same thing over and over again.
Only listening, it looks like he's swimming through pudding.
It's like you roll on your back and you come up and you like.
Yeah, but you don't understand, Austin. You're experiencing a new birth. That's what it looks like.
Right. So I mean, on the one hand, like, more power to you. Like, good job. Like, honestly, I'm happy that you found something that's fulfilling and that you enjoy and that is an outlet for you. But on the other hand, I'm not experiencing, and I don't think I'm alone. I don't think most people experience a visceral connection to that particular form of dancing.
Oh, it's fired.
It's like,
man.
I don't know.
This is heavy, man.
Let me be the last person on earth to tell someone that they are not a legitimate artist. I never want to be that guy, but I just don't understand. Like, I'd love to see the come from someone who is that kind of dancer, because there were some moments during watching them, and I had never seen them do their choreography before, that when the night of the performance was the first night I saw them do this. But they were all doing the same thing. And this one lady who was kind of seemed like the older kind of like leader of the group, she was incorporating like elements of ballet and other styles of dancing beyond just the weird free movement of your body portion. And she was probably, the stuff that she incorporated from other styles of dance was the most interesting stuff I saw throughout every choreography. I had like 3 or 4 songs I contributed. Everything else was just all kind of samey. I don't know. So I guess, what is your advice for someone like me who is like, I've sat down and I have a philosophy of I'll try anything once, right? I'll listen to it. I'll look at it. I will be more than happy to give it a test drive just to make sure that I don't like it at the very least, right? And I've tried and tried and tried to like delve into this form of music and this form of dancing, and it's like, and oftentimes they're dancing to like pop songs and stuff, like Hello by Adele, or Say Something, or what is that other one, I'm a little unsteady, hold on to me because I'm a little unsteady. It's like so dramatic and so cheesy. It's like,
so
that's the kind of.
My advice is marijuana. That's it. That's all it is. I mean, that's how you
take it.
That's how you enjoy that, man. It's the only way. Smoke a little doobie, show up to the show.
Whoa, this is all.
Yeah.
Did
It's I'm just gonna say that it becomes much more interesting when one person turns into 11 identical people doing the same motions. You know what I mean?
I don't think
it changes the game.
Is a mind-altering drug in that capacity.
Oh, I don't know. I wouldn't know how to insert marijuana into my body. Okay, hi. We wanted to cut out a little part where we went into an intense political conversation about wonderful, exciting things, but it just got way off the rails. So we're going to jump back into Artland, and we were talking about some things about ballet and how Austin just loves ballet and it's his favorite art form, and particularly the interpretive
jazz ballet,
jazz interpretive dancing, where you're coming out of an egg. That's the motions that you're making. I'm hatching.
The sprouting of the flower.
Right. All of that. There's no melody.
The mighty oak tree.
That is your favorite art form. That was what we were getting at.
Absolutely. 100%.
But you were saying just a second ago when we were talking about jumping back into this thing that you wanted to say something. Go ahead and say that thing.
I just had a thought about we were just talking about fringe, right? How things get out there, like interpretive dance for me is just like so weird, but it's not a fringe thing because it's popular, right? Like people like it. But I've been thinking like how the fringe, and we touched on this earlier, how the fringe informs the popular.
Oh, interesting.
Right?
Yeah,
because at one point jazz was fringe, right? And then jazz became the popular form of music in America. At one point,
I would argue that it's still pretty fringe for most normal people.
But it came full circle.
Okay, I see.
It's fringe again.
Gotcha.
Right. It was the popular art form, and then the 70s happened, and by the time the 80s rolled around and everyone had a collective wake-up call, and they were like, oh my God, what have we done? It was too late, and jazz wasn't popular anymore, and we were overtaken by hip-hop. And not that there's anything wrong with hip-hop, but if it came down to either hip-hop or rap, or hip-hop or jazz, I would probably pick jazz.
Hip-hop or rap? Which one do you keep? Oh, the choices.
Slips of the tongue, man. Freudian slips when you say one thing and you mean your mother. I mean, I know.
That was a good one. I like that.
I didn't make that up.
So I was curious. I think a good spot to end up with this. Good thoughts, by the way. I think a good spot to end up with this is when it comes to inspiring yourself, trying to be diverse in your inspirations. I think it's also important to be meaningful in your inspirations, and that you don't settle for things that are just pretty and nice, but that you try to find deeper. You try to find a deeper purpose for what you're trying to be up to. I
think it's important that you pay attention to things you like. Like if you hear something that catches your ear, or you see something, like you watch a movie and you're like, that's so cool, that is so clever. Don't be afraid to take that.
Right. Because you don't have to take in every single influence ever, right? There's a reason you like things. I mean, it's probably because they are incredibly interesting and maybe more nuanced artistic things.
Katy Perry.
Yeah. Oh man, pop artists, like.
I was gonna say
like
Michael Bay.
that
movies,
one with the black
like
one.
Transformers.
Oh yes. There's definitely a nuance to the way that the shot is framed at the beginning of that one. You know what I'm talking about? It's a very special thing. And then all the explosions. It's my favorite kind of filmmaking. No narrative, all explosions.
All explosions.
So it's a really special.
The explosions are the narrative.
Yes. I think
In fact,
put it. You know what? People don't understand that. You're absolutely right. The explosions are the narrative. If I could get all of my friends to understand that. Screw Christopher Nolan and Quentin Tarantino. Well, Quentin Tarantino is of the school of explosions are the narrative too, I think, a little bit. Yeah, they're just...
Chris Nolan. What's the name of that guy? He directed Ex Machina. and I think he did Annihilation.
I should absolutely know this because I know Ex Machina is supposed to be a legendary film.
Alex Garland.
Okay.
Alex Garland.
Okay.
Yeah, those guys.
Yeah,
Michael Bay.
They're
Explosions.
just trying. They're trying to be Transformers. You know what I mean?
Okay, so this is an interesting point because we're obviously both mocking Transformers as being a low
I don't know what you're
art
talking
form.
about.
Right, we're both saying like Transformers, that's low bar, right? But what makes it?
That is a great question. That is a beautifully great question. I think the reality of it is that it is art, just like all the other things are art, but it's made up of things that we are, whether we realize it consciously or subconsciously, it's made up of things that sort of repulse us, right? So with Transformers, a critique of it would be that it's so focused on trying to make money that it lacks creative ingenuity, or it lacks the depth that, you know, great Tarantino film could hold. And many other different things like that, right? Maybe it feels so formulaic, right? Like pop music. Pop music is another fantastic example of something that musicians have a really hard time with, because it has been proven that it's a very formulaic expression at this point, because it's designed to do things that are opposing our values as artists, or are opposing our values in the sort of hierarchy.
Shout out, honorable mention to contemporary Christian music too.
Oh,
just throwing that out there.
I was watching a video critique of Christian. So I grew up in this world, and I have high critiques for Christian music.
Yes.
Oh man. So yes, contemporary Christian music falls into the same realm that pop music falls into, which there's a lot of formulaic sort of industry conveyor belt kind of feel to it. Go ahead.
Yes. No, so I think what makes it lower, what makes it less than, is its lack of risk. I think there's a certain element of art that we love that is risky. And I don't know, this is just a hypothesis, but I think the reason that things like pop music, contemporary Christian music, that, you know, pop movies like Transformers and The Fast and the Furious, they just like what's something else? It's like
a popular movie?
No. It's just like another art, to draw from another art form that's just like super formulaic and dull and boring.
So in the photography world, like, I think the Instagram landscape travel photography is very samey. You have this shot of the feet hanging out of the helicopter, or it's the shot of the Golden Gate Bridge from the same angle that we've seen 195,000 times.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. But like, there's something to be said for the value of doing something, not reinventing the wheel necessarily, right? If someone does something that you like, do that thing the way they did it, right? Because that obviously works. But at the same time, people take that philosophy and they just run it into the ground because they know that it's safe, because people have liked it already. And so they're like, people liked it before. Let's do it again and again and again and again and again. And eventually it becomes so, our world becomes so saturated with it. Like, for instance,
well, they turn it into a bag of potato chips. Like it becomes.
Bag of potato chips never gets old. Listen,
bear with me. No, but no, I'm saying they turn it into something on a shelf that looks exactly like the thing next to it. But because they can look at the numbers at the end of the year and say, all right, we're still making 75% as much as we made last year on this product. So let's keep doing that. Because if we tried to make avocado chips, it would probably go to zero. Like, we don't want to take that risk. And creativity is by definition risk taking.
Mm-hmm. Right. So like in pop music, a big thing. Remember when dubstep was huge? Dubstep was this big phenomenon, and everyone loves to make fun of it. There was a Key and Peele video that was really popular about these two guys moving, and every time this guy played his music, it was dubstep, and the guy's got a nosebleed, and everything went crazy, and all the boxes started flying around the room. That was fun, right? Everyone liked to make fun of Skrillex and Deadmau5 because so it's just a noise.
You know, the video that I don't know if it was ever made, and if it wasn't, it's really a shame. Is like Skrillex walking around recording the sounds for his dubstep song, because I could just picture him with like a Zoom mic walking up to a car and like setting off the car alarm, and then going up to like a construction site and recording that. And then there's a bird, and he's going to slow that down and play it backwards.
You would love some of the sound design channels that I follow, because there's guys who literally they make sound effects for a living. They like do sound design for like video games. He's like, today we're gonna make a ray gun sound out of everyday objects, and he just goes and walks around his neighborhood and just records stuff, and then he pitches it up or down or like slows the speed or whatever, and he like runs it through some effects, and then bada bing bada boom, you got a ray gun sound out of a radiator and a cat meowing and the wind. It's like crazy.
Yeah. I watched the video the other day of it was a breakdown of the scene from Star Wars Phantom Menace. No, I'm sorry, not Phantom Menace. The third one. Crap. Revenge of the Sith. There we go. And
I'm a massive Star Wars nerd.
Excellent.
I just outed myself.
All right, let's stay somewhat on track, okay? Because I could also go down that rabbit hole with you. I've watched endless YouTube videos about the expanded universe. Okay, so let's control ourselves here.
Oh, the Clone Wars are back. The Clone Wars are coming back.
Oh, like the show?
The show. It's coming back.
Oh my god.
They just announced it recently.
Oh heavens.
There's a trailer and everything.
This is big. This is a big moment. We're drifting. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so the Mustafar scene, the fight between Obi-Wan and
the
Anakin.
Big climactic fight where they're killing each other with it's blue lightsaber versus blue lightsaber, which they never done before.
Ah, yes, and so it's a lava planet. There's lava everywhere, and the scene it's only a couple of minutes long. And I see myself at the bottom. This is intentional? Are you intentionally showing me my own face at the bottom of the screen? Okay. I
don't know. I remember the Lego Star Wars episode or video level was a little longer than that.
Yeah, well, yeah. But what they did in the film was they mixed it in with a bunch of other scenes, so that actual scene is really short. But the video
it takes longer because it's spliced between other scenes.
Right. So I'll have to send you this video because you'll
how to pad your runtime 101.
Exactly. Now that I know, then don't forget the 11 commercial breaks. But I'll send
on a movie.
Now that I know, if you're watching it on Fox,
if you're watching it on YouTube, then they start breaking it. Like it's a 2-minute video. You have to watch a 30-second.
Right. You have to load them. You have to play a playlist of videos, and they're all in 240p. So,
no. The ads are full HD. The video itself is 240p.
Right. That's what. Yeah. The
ads
throttling
your connection.
Beautiful quality.
Ads are crystal clear.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's be honest. But and also they have it zoomed out. The audio is pitch shifted or slowed down. They have a picture of like a horse on a landscape so that it doesn't get content. The YouTube doesn't pick it up.
Content flag.
Right. So, okay. So Mustafar scene, and this is a short documentary, I think from maybe one of the DVDs, of everything that went into making that scene from every department on the set, or on the set and the post-production. Oh, bless you. Oh, heavens.
Thank you.
Pre-production, production, post-production, all the teams that went into it. And this documentary is an hour long for a sequence that's like a couple minutes.
Wow.
And it was amazing because they went through, like I said, pre-production, all the team of people on set. You have the camera guy, you have the focus puller for the camera, you have...
Was it on a soundstage or was it Like, did they have like actual props and
They
stuff?
actually went to Mustafar, the planet. It's a real place.
Like, I wonder how much of it was green screen and how much of it was I'm going to stand on this prop lava rock. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It was 80. Okay, so I'll put it this way. The stuff where they're interacting with the environment is all green screen. But the set, this is interesting. I think people don't realize this because they criticize Star Wars for being overly green screened in the prequels. But the set that they built to represent Mustafar, the planet, which is, volcanic planet, there's lava, that was actually a miniature real version of the planet. They actually ran this like gooey fluid stuff through there and made it look like lava. It looked like real lava. And they took the cameras and hovered them down. So you remember the part in the scene where the arm that they're on falls into the lava?
Oh, yes. That's a cool scene.
The lava. Yeah. So it hits the lava, all that
whole fight was awesome. I loved that fight scene.
Yeah. And it was so emotional. It was such an emotional part.
Well, you have less of an emotional connection because Hayden Christensen was a piece of cardboard in that whole movie trilogy. But
oh, okay. Oh, well, that's another route to go down. But it
was a good fight scene. It was really engaging action.
Well, so people critique it because they think that because it's green screen and because it's so overly choreographed, I guess, that it lacks, like, one of my biggest critiques of most action movies is it lacks risk. And what I mean by that is you have these movies where the people are fighting and they've dodged so many bullets and they've fallen 150 feet so many times and didn't even get hurt that you're like, nobody's going to die here.
Right.
Nothing's going to happen. But anyway, so it falls into the lava. There's a wide shot of it drifting down the lava river. So the lava river and everything you see in that wide shot is made up of, except for the actual thing floating down, that's CGI, but it's made up of a real miniature set that's been built much like the older Star Wars movies, right? Which was like a legendary part of the older Star Wars movies. Is he built? I
love the old Star Wars movies.
Yeah, and they're all practical. They were all practically built, little miniature versions of Star Destroyers and stuff. But you see the real set, and then you see all of these extra CGI layers layered on top. But what's interesting is the lava. Blew my mind. The lava for the they
actually went and got real lava.
Yeah, they actually went to. There was a mountain. Literally, there was a. They brought lava and poured it over the actors, and they had to like clone Hayden Christensen like 5 times.
It's like The Prestige all over again. I just spoiled The Prestige for all of you who haven't seen The Prestige. I'm so sorry.
So the lava in that scene, you were close. They went and there was a volcano eruption that was happening as they were filming the movie. And George Lucas says, like, get on a plane, we're sending you to this country. I forget which volcano it was. Mount Etna, I think it was erupting. They filmed it, and all the lava shooting up in the background that you see, it's all real footage of a volcano.
Oh my goodness.
Erupting.
That's awesome.
Isn't that nuts?
I have a newfound respect for that movie now because I thought it was kind of lame, honestly.
Yeah.
But that scene is that whole sequence is just
it made me respect the scene more and the prequels more because
well, of course, it takes a village to make a movie of that magnitude.
Absolutely.
Regardless of how bad the actual end product is, they actually had to put in the work. It's the same with Transformers. Like, all those giant robots, they had to actually find someone to go and animate all of that. And they had to have people managing the sets. Mm-hmm. And they had to have location scouts. They had to have prop builders. They had to have costume designers. They had to have all this craziness.
Well, so get this. I mean, one of the things you have to do when you're what's called keying out a green screen in the background, which means you cut the people out of
so there's just green
sound. Yeah, right. It's a green movie. You cut the people out of the shot so that the green screen's gone and the people are still there, right? So that's called rotoscoping. And they have a person who her job is to be the rotoscoper. She cuts the people out for the green screens. Yeah,
that's
from
all she
the green
does.
screens, rather. I believe that's all she does.
My brother does that and more when he makes his videos.
Exactly. That's the
he
thing.
rotoscopes all of his stuff. He puts on all the effects and everything.
Yeah.
You have a person whose sole purpose is to just rotoscope.
Well, they have a person whose sole purpose is to pull focus on the cameras, which is, if you make YouTube videos, that's a crazy idea because you, like, it's all guerrilla. Like, it's, for one, it's autofocus, but if you are pulling focus, you're holding the camera and pulling focus at the same time, right? These films have people who their only job is to make sure the focus is sharp. So you'll see this in this video, in this documentary that covers the entire expanse of them creating this scene.
Well, now I'm inspired. We're talking about interdisciplinary inspiration. I'm inspired to have a whole suite of music that's all just, every person just does one thing. I'm writing this down right now.
Yeah. I like it. Wait, isn't that called a band?
No, like, I mean, obviously it's a band, but when everyone does exactly one thing and that's their only job.
Okay.
No one does multiple things at once, which musicians are very good at. We're good at multitasking, right? Yeah. Especially rhythm and percussion people. We're good at. I'm a pianist. I have 10 fingers and I have 2 feet that I use to work 3 pedals and 88 keys all at the same time, right?
Hmm.
That's not including if I'm doing some weird free jazz stuff where I'm like banging on the side of the piano or like plucking the strings with my fingers or whatever, right? Which I don't do that very often. I don't do that often enough. It's fun.
Well, in most bigger bands, well, I'll reverse it. In most smaller bands, the drummer will go and set up his own drum set at the gig, right?
Right.
But in bigger bands, you have a guy who's called the drum tech. Roadie. Yeah, and he sets up your drum set for you and you just show up and play.
Right.
Like,
and
maybe
in smaller bands you have one guitar.
Sometimes.
You're lucky if you have 2 guitars, you know, that you switch between songs. If you're a bigger band, you got your roadie who has 5 of your favorite guitars that are all tuned to different tunings. So when you want to go in a song with drop D, you just say, bring it over here. Yep. And he unplugs your guitar and hands you your other guitar and plugs it in for you, and then you're good to go.
If you're in a hardcore band, they throw it across the stage to you.
Yeah, you're just like, and you're like, don't break my guitar, please.
And if you're in a jazz band, they have doves gently rest the strap.
No, if you're in a jazz band, you just have one guitar.
Oh, okay. I see. And it's out of tune.
Just an amp. No pedals, no effects.
Yeah.
One guitar.
Yeah.
That's the Wynton Marsalis school of thought. If you're not Freddie Green and just doing this the entire time you're playing, just...
Get out of here.
Weather report who?
So I forget what this...
You have to play upright bass. You can't play electric bass.
No.
I don't care if your name is Jaco Pastorius. You can't play electric bass in a big band.
No.
Period. End of story.
No.
That's stupid to me. I don't know.
No, you're not getting a solo. That's for sure.
No, bass players get solos.
No, I'm saying if you don't have an upright bass, they're not going to give you a solo.
They won't let you play period in Lincoln Center. If you don't have an upright, if you can't handle your own on upright at Lincoln Center, it doesn't matter how good you are on electric.
Mm.
And really,
is there like a firing squad out back for you if this happens?
Absolutely.
Wow.
No, yeah. It's New York, so they have the NYPD on call.
Oh my gosh. It's like 1940s Germany or something, man. That's wow. All right. So on that note, do you think we sacrifice greater inspiration for lesser inspiration? Like that we don't take the time to inspire ourselves towards things that are meaningful because we're focused on the things that are more pretty?
I think meaning is what you make of it. And if you want to make something pretty, and that's what's most meaningful to you, then go for it. And I think that's what's going to be the most popular. I think the people who really want something deeper are always going to be in the minority, but they're no less valid or meaningful artists for that. Mm. And I think that if you take the time to really delve into your art form and to hone your craft, you'll be deeply rewarded. If nowhere else than the fact that you'll be content with the fact that you've mastered your craft and that you've contributed to your tradition.
Interesting. That's a good point. I wonder if what can happen though is that if you don't have a higher meaning to go after with your work, meaning that you focus on doing what makes you feel like almost that you're self-indulgent in your work to the point.
Yes, that's what I was about to say.
Yeah, I think that creativity naturally is a self-indulgent practice, and that you have to, and not in a way that's selfish. I want to make a distinction.
I get what you mean.
Self-indulgent versus selfish, not self-overindulgent. Let's put it that way. But what can happen in that self-indulgent journey towards mastery and towards enjoying the art and just enjoying it, right? Which I think that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, at least in that area or in some area of your life, it's a really good idea to have something meaningful, some reason why you're doing it, some service to other people in what you're doing. Like I hear people talk about they play music just because they love to play music, and cool in a sense, depends on what you mean by that. But I think if your whole life is based around you indulging your love for music and you don't attach something to that helps other people, I think there can really be some negative effects to that.
I think that's exactly right. And I think an element or a wrinkle or like I don't know, an angle of that is when people only listen to their music, the music that they make. I don't ever listen to anyone else, like I just make my stuff, right? I don't draw inspiration for anything. I'm just doing what or the worst of the people who are proud to be ignorant. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
By that? Like the people who are like, I will never learn music theory because it makes me less effective as a musician. I can't be as creative or expressive because if I learn music theory, because that's all boxes. That's all things I have to worry about doing right or wrong or whatever. And they don't realize that that's so dumb because music theory is descriptive rather than prescriptive, right?
Yeah.
Adam Neely has a video that he talks about that concept, but it's the same with anything. Like, imagine if someone was proud of the fact that they didn't know how lighting works and they're a filmmaker, right? Mm-hmm. Like, lighting is so important to everything, to the mood of a scene, to the meanings, the way that your characters interact with each other, the way the audience interacts with the film, like just elements of like color theory and angles. And like, if you were like proud to not know any of that stuff, it's just what you think it should be. Sure, maybe you can intuitively figure some of that stuff out, but like that isn't a massive sabotage on the idea of the tradition of art and where art is headed. You know what I mean?
Well, I think what's interesting is that the person that would say that is somebody who is in their head attempting to be open-minded. That's what the place they're coming from. They're like, screw tradition. That's just rules.
Mm-hmm.
However, that's almost it's a form of closed-mindedness, right? You're saying I love experimentalism. I love being experimental, but I don't love the stuff that has come before me. I don't love...
And how can you be experimental if you don't know what's been tried before? If you don't know how to experiment, you know what I mean? You're limiting your tool belt, your tools in your belt at that point.
You have to be...
You're crippling yourself.
You have to be intentional to... Because I don't think it's wrong to close yourself off to some things to an extent, but you have to be very careful with what you close yourself off to, because that's actually contradicting your philosophy as a creator. If you're somebody who's like, F the system, if you're not taking in the tradition, then you're leaving something behind that has incredible meaning. It's really important, right? Classical music has a lot to teach you as a musician. So I think the correct approach is, what can I pull from this? What is wrong about this? What can I pull from this experimental world where we play songs with, didgeridoos and we use car alarm sounds? And what is wrong with this? When I say wrong, I don't necessarily mean like actually wrong. I mean, what is something about this that is problematic?
Mm-hmm.
So I think you have to be open-minded to all of that stuff. And I think that you have to be open-minded to all sorts of different arts and trying to see what you can pull from them, and also be willing to be honest about things. Like, I think there are a lot of art forms that lack an artistic depth. They actually lack that because the focus is on, money, or the focus it's in a wrong place, right?
Yeah.
Or that art is not digestible, because, like, I think of the interpretive dance idea that you were speaking to. That's something that is not so digestible for most people, even to you as an artist, a pretty open-minded guy. That's something that is hard to wrap your mind around and sort of groove with, like fall into, like when you listen to a good song that you groove with it on an emotional level more so than just a technical level. That's a really special thing. It's hard to do that with certain art forms. And that's because they have failed to make it, they have potentially failed to make it digestible for you as somebody who's trying to digest it.
Or it becomes more of an intellectual exercise than it is an exercise in expression. Sure.
And that's okay. That's okay. Right. It's not wrong that they want to make something that's completely undigestible to a lot of people. Maybe it's just for a few people, but
that's my stuff.
Right.
I don't do anything emotional at all.
And it all falls on a spectrum, right? Like what's digestible to somebody is not digestible. So, it's not wrong that they do that, but the way I look at it is, okay, you have to understand the cause and effect. Like, I think that art falls in this realm not of right and wrong, but of cause and effect. And if you're trying to be digestible, well, you're not doing a good job. Mm-hmm. And I think that applies there. So I think you have to open your mind to looking to how you look at art as a whole, right? And I think that's what I struggle with when I watch other people who create YouTube videos or music or photography or paintings. Is I feel like a lot of people fail. It's very hard not to put restrictions on things in our head. It's very hard. Like I try to be very careful when I say you can't do this, or this is definitively this, because it is highly subjective, and when you say something is off limits, you're running the risk of saying that from a perspective of your cultural influence. Meaning, if you got outside your culture, if you grew up in a different culture, you might think something completely different about that thing. So, is it really off limits?
Right.
So
exactly.
Be open-minded and look for meaning and enjoy yourself.
Yes, that's the most important thing. Enjoy yourself.
Enjoy yourself. Sorry, I just saw that. That's funny. Your iPad is at 5%. Well, I was gonna wrap it up. So this is actually a great time to do this. So we don't want you to die on us.
Be terrible.
That would be a terrible thing because I would miss your glasses. Humanity. All right. Hey, thanks everybody for watching and or listening. Hey, Austin, where can people find you?
You can find me at Twitter at Austin_S_Ross or at Instagram at the same handle. And you can also find me on SoundCloud as Austin S. Ross.
Gotcha.
I haven't started my YouTube channel yet, but we're getting there.
I want to see it. I want it to happen so bad. My loins are ready. All right. Bye, guys. He has gone into the ether.